But is Raymond Weill's discovery really the royal necropolis? Let's analyze the evidence, both for and against. Point 1. Lack of historical memory. If this were truly the royal necropolis, it wouldn't have been so easily forgotten, and it would have received more attention in later historical records. But knowledge of the place was not lost during the Babylonian exile, nor after the destruction of the first and second temples. We know that part of the population was not exiled. The Jewish sages knew its location just before the Bar Kokhba revolt, which resulted in, besides genocide and destruction, the prohibition for Jews to live in Jerusalem. It seems that the exact location was lost from then on, and certainly during the Byzantine era, due to the scarce Jewish presence and the devotion of Christian pilgrims. That is, the change of the old Jewish population for a new foreign population in Jerusalem caused the place to be forgotten, and the devotion of the pilgrims, who wanted to know where the place was, made it reappear in the wrong place. Point 2. Absence of evidence confirming its use as tombs. No artifacts, bones, or human remains have been found to support the claim that they were used as tombs. But this is not surprising, given that tomb looting was a common practice. The site had subsequent secondary uses, which could have altered or destroyed the original remains, and there was intensive exploitation of the area as a quarry, which damaged the pre-existing structures. And even more so, cisterns require annual cleaning for maintenance, which would leave them especially empty of previous remains. Point 3. The main findings correspond to the Second Temple period. In the lower tunnel of T1, traces of a black-grayish mortar were discovered near the grooves in the side walls, which can be dated to the Second Temple period. The triangular niches carved into the wall, probably designed to hold oil lamps, also date from the Second Temple period. It is evident that T1 underwent significant alterations over time, probably on multiple occasions. These modifications indicate later renovations rather than reflecting the structure's original function. In contrast, T2 has better preserved its original design. Weill himself suggested that these structures might have been reused for the Theodoros synagogue. There are similar cases in certain tombs of the First Temple period, which currently serve as basements and rooms within the houses of the inhabitants of Silwan. On the hypothesis that the structures were cisterns, the original form of the site does not match the typical design of cisterns. Cisterns are not built with openings at the bottom instead of the top. Although there are tunnel-shaped cisterns from the Second Temple period, these generally have upper walls lined with masonry, and are usually much smaller than Weill's supposed tombs. However, even if T1 and T2 were reused as cisterns at that time, this does not invalidate the possibility that they were originally tombs from the First Temple period. But the main argument against the identification of Weill's tombs is their difference from other First Temple period tombs in Jerusalem. Tombs like those in Silwan, Ketef Hinnom, the École Biblique. The overall design of Weill's tombs is very distinct. The quality of the stone carving is noticeably inferior. Lacking are sophisticated architectural elements, characteristic of royal tombs of the era, such as bone repositories, gabled ceilings, headrests in the Hathor style, walls and doors carved with frames, moldings, and decorative cornices. If the nobility of Judah was buried in finely crafted tombs, why would the founders of the dynasty rest in these rudimentary tunnels? But this comparison is chronologically inconsistent. Weill's structures date from the 10th to the 9th centuries BCE, while the cited examples are 200 years later. And Rabbi Akiva's text emphasizes the fact that the tombs had tunnels that conducted the impurity to the Kidron Valley. It should be considered that this could be the purpose of the elongated design of said cavities. Royal and elite tombs of the early Iron Age and the late Bronze Age offer more appropriate comparisons. But, since this is the main argument against, a deeper explanation is required. The beginning of the Israelite monarchy was a period of transition from a semi-nomadic lifestyle to urbanization. Both David and Solomon needed the help of their friend King Ahiram of Tyre to build their palaces. This dependence on external assistance likely influenced the modesty of the early royal tombs. One would expect the great constructions of both kings to be built in Phoenician style. Hiram provided cedar wood and artisans for David's palace. And for Solomon's temple and palace, there was an agreement for wood and workers, with Hiram Abi, the craftsman, for the bronze work. The times of David and Solomon marked a period of civilizational changes, coinciding with the end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Iron Age. Instead of comparing their tombs with those of a later, more advanced era, wouldn't it be more appropriate to do so with tombs from the Bronze Age and its end, and if possible, with tombs of Phoenician royalty? The examples we have are spectacular. In Ebla, Syria, we have 2 royal tombs from the Middle Bronze Age, around 1800 BCE, excavated in the rock under a palace, with asymmetric and rudimentary chambers. Their identification as royal tombs is based on their location and the funerary goods found inside them. Also in Syria, in Ugarit, but a little later, in the Late Bronze Age, another tomb was found under the royal palace, with a single chamber built with ashlar stones, a corbel vault, and a stepped access. In Hazor, Israel, tombs of the same style from the Middle Bronze Age, 1750 to 1550 BCE, have been found, as well as another from the Late Bronze Age too, 1350 BCE, called Funerary Cave 8144, which was a tunnel excavated in the rock near an elite structure. It was accessed through a shaft and a set of 4 steps, which is another surprisingly similar detail to the T1 and T2 tombs of Weill. And finally, Byblos, the tomb of Ahiram, around the 11th century BCE. Ahiram was a contemporary of David, who, we remember, requested the help of another Phoenician king, Hiram of Tyre, to build his palace. Ahiram's final resting place was found after a landslide on the cliffs surrounding Byblos, in present-day Lebanon, in late 1923, revealing several royal tombs. It was 10 meters deep, carved into limestone, and accessed through a narrow shaft leading to an irregular chamber, 26 feet long and 13 feet wide. Inside this rough crypt, 3 stone sarcophagi lay crammed together, each 8 feet in length. 2 were plain and anonymous, but the third bore the marks of royalty, the sarcophagus of Ahiram, now displayed at the Beirut Museum.
A sarcophagus made by Itobal, son of Ahiram, king of Byblos.
This remains the oldest substantial Phoenician text we know of. Yet the tomb itself does not reflect such grandeur. Its walls are rough, its proportions modest. Only the treasures inside, the elaborate ornamentation of the coffin, and its location in the royal cemetery of Byblos reveal its royal purpose. The paradox of early royalty in the Levant is its modesty. Ahiram's contemporaries in the city of David, like the royalty and elite from the Bronze Age to the early Iron Age, built architecturally simple tombs where their authority and status were inferred through context, funerary goods, inscriptions, enduring names, and burial locations, rather than through grandiose or monumental architecture. However, these characteristics would have been lost in Weill's tombs due to looting and erosion. The true monument was not the tomb itself, but the legacy of the name it housed. Later Judahite tombs, the ornate examples from the late Iron Age in Jerusalem, reflect the mature wealth and ambition of the kingdom, with influences from other civilizations. But applying this later standard to earlier periods is anachronistic. Weill's tombs align with the simplicity of royal burials from the Davidic era and others from the earlier Near East, especially with the contemporary Phoenician style. Critics who reject T1 and T2 by comparing them to tombs from the late First Temple period may be overlooking this fundamental chronological and typological disconnect. If these structures were indeed tombs, they are exceptionally unique. Unlike most funerary sites of the time, they appear to have been designed for a single individual, a distinction that immediately sets them apart. Their large dimensions and the extensive quarrying required suggest deliberate effort, which hints that they may have been intended for an important figure or a dynasty. For decades, Raymond Weill's identification was widely accepted. Early archaeologists found compelling reasons to support it. But in more recent years, cynicism and skepticism have gained ground. Has this shift been driven by new evidence, or simply by academic trends that favor reinterpretation over tradition? Since the 1960s, the minimalists sowed doubt about David and Solomon and about the unified kingdom due to lack of evidence, not due to evidence against it. But each new discovery indicates otherwise. The geographical argument in favor of this site remains surprisingly strong. Biblical texts indicate that the royal necropolis was within the city of David, a small area, only 4.8 hectares, 12 acres. The biblical text itself specifies this location and implies its royal Phoenician style. Rav Akiva tells us that they were inside the city but with tunnels to the Kidron Valley. Despite exhaustive excavations, No other candidates for the tombs of Judah's royalty have been discovered within this limited space, although it is true that they could have been completely dismantled by later quarrying. If these structures are indeed tombs, as Mazar and Usishkin believe, what else could they be but the long-lost royal necropolis of the kings of Jerusalem?
Own a piece of biblical history. Carry with you the priestly blessing, the oldest biblical text ever discovered. Direct from the city of David, each purchase of its unique products directly supports the biblical archaeological excavations and discoveries in the cradle of Jerusalem. Visit store.cityofdavid.org.il and use my code CODG10001 to get your discount and help unearth biblical history.